Hi students, it's Mrs. Burkhardt and this is our fourth and final tutorial lesson, and I look forward to seeing how you do with this one. We're going to be looking at much more advanced transform and painting on layers controls in this lesson. So pay attention, and I think you're going to like what this can do for your images. Anyways, to begin, this is a really kittywampus image. It leans a little to the left, the wall is a little angled, and you might say, well, you know, sometimes angled lines are really cool, and they are. But in this case, I think that it's just distracting. They don't look intentionally angled, they look just more snapshotty angled, like it wasn't shot carefully. So to correct that, we're first, of course, going to Command J, duplicate the bottom layer, and then we're going to move into transform. To transform, you're going to use Command T. You could find transform in the edit menu, edit transform, and then these are all the transformations possible. But I think it's good to get used to the shortcuts. Command T. Next, right click, and that brings up all your transformation options. The two we're going to play with are distort and warp. First, distort. Notice how transform brings up the handles that you saw earlier using the move tool. And the great thing about distort is that it allows you to pull each corner independent of the others. So I can literally just lift up this corner, I can pull this down, the step is a little higher, and I can pull the wall over to the right and try and correct for those inconsistencies. This is still a little low. Let's go a little higher. A lot of times it's just you keep correcting until you feel it's right. I think overall that's better. But we're not done. Now we need to use warp. And to use warp, we click again and go to the warp tool. And that'll help correct for what's called chromatic aberration, which just means the lens is round and sometimes verticals are curved as a result. Whoopsie. So it's pretty cool though. You can literally just click anywhere and push and pull that point to straighten something out or do all kinds of really interesting creative things. I think that's pretty good, except the bottom got lifted, so we're going to pull that back down. And the stair looks a little high, so even though we're in warp, we could lift that up a little, although we don't want it to get curved. So we have to be careful. I could also go back to distort. Actually, that looks pretty darn good. So now you have the same, just like the move tool, accept or reject, and we're going to accept the changes. And to just see how much different it looks, turn the eyeball off and you'll see the before, and now we have the after. Now let's go about trying to make something interesting out of this. I'd say it's overall a really grainy, low light, flat image. So the first thing that I would probably do is go into my adjustment layers and bring up curves. Curves are a great way to add contrast. Remember our S curve? So we're going to do that. It's already getting better. It's a little grittier. And then, as much as I love my dear gradient maps, we're going to try that. But this time we want to keep it lighter. It's such a dark image, so we're going to this section of adjustments. So you can go to lighten, screen, color dodge, linear dodge, lighter color, but we're going to try the first one in our blending modes, the lighten. And go up here, remember, and this is how we can go to different blending modes. Or places in the gradient, sorry. And I kind of like that. I'm not crazy about the purple, but what I was really going for is to create a sense of light at the top of the stairs. And this is actually really starting to make that happen. So we're going to stay there. But I'd like more yellow. And this is the cool thing. I almost hate to show you, but use it very sparingly to add emphasis, and it can be super effective. Right to the left of the garbage can is a box with the corner cut, and that's what you want to click on, and that's the add a blank layer icon. With that selected, let's go and put it in overlay. I always start with overlay first. You can adjust lighter with lighten. You can adjust darker with multiply. There's all sorts of different things you can do, but overlay gives you a great place to start. And I already have selected yellow with my color picker. So let's bring our opacity all the way up. And I'm just going to paint a little brightness at the top of the stairs, and then I'm lowering my opacity because I want to very subtly spill some of that light, like it's almost like a force that is bleeding off the top of the stairs and maybe coming for you, to try and get that sort of feel. So that's starting to get interesting. But the thing I'm not crazy about still is the purple. The purple looks sort of sweet, and I want this to feel more ominous. So I'm going back to my adjustment layer, and now I'm going to go up to black and white. And I'm getting this really milky black and white, and I'm going to cut the opacity way back. That's really not quite right. And I'm going to do another black and white, and this time I'm going to overlay it. And that's starting to get interesting. If I turn it off, both of these, see how sweet that is. I'd probably go back to this first milky black and white, and this is what you'll do, and I'm going to block so that I get a much more intense yellow, because I really want that to feel, ooh, I can almost feel that in my bones as it comes across. There we go. That is better. Now the purple is there, but it doesn't feel quite as sweet. It has a harder look to it. And FYI, purple and yellow are complementary colors, which means they're opposites on the color wheel and create a lot of emotional intensity. There's only one more thing I want to do in this image, and that's blur the top of it. And to do that, you'll do something really, really interesting. But by the way, I was going to show you something. In Photoshop, say you accidentally had your yellow in the wrong place. Not that any place is really wrong, and I actually kind of like that. All you have to do to rearrange order is grab a layer and drag it. I guess for now we'll keep it down here where it was. Now for the cool thing. Click back on your very topmost layer. Make it highlighted. Next, with your left hand, click all three of these keys at once. Shift, Option, Command. And with your right hand, click E. And what will happen if you do it correctly, Shift, Option, Command, and then E, is you'll get one layer that's a composite of all of these together. And that's super useful for adding sharpness, for blurring, and that's what we're going to do right now. Blurring has to be done very cautiously, and we're going to go to surface blur. Otherwise it just looks like a blurry image. This was at 20 radius, and we can look at that. The radius of the blur, we could go up just a little bit. Let's go to a radius of 25. And the threshold, how intense of a blur? Do we want to bring that down a little? Remember, we're going to be blocking some of it. If we go way up, it gets too blurry. Although we could cut back on it. Let's go back to 20. I think that's interesting. Or maybe even 25. Let's say 25, 25, and you'll be setting yours to the exact same settings. That makes it really easy to remember. And then OK. What we want is for the light at the top to feel like it's glowing. And now we have to add a layer mask to block some of it, because we don't want our stairs to be glowing. We want the top light to be glowing. Right now it just looks like a blurry picture. So I can't show it to you because my screencast won't go that low, but right to the left of the yin yang is a rectangle with a dot. Click that, and that you can adds a layer mask, and you can add a layer mask to any layer. Next, black blocks. You remember that. So let's first go and just block the front. Ooh, cool. Now I'm going to click white. White allows, and bring my opacity down because I want it to kind of, the glow to fall down. You can see the gray coming down in here. And I also want, let's bring up the opacity because this is closer to you. Think of a large aperture image. The things up close to you are going to be in focus, and then it'll gradually fade out. And I want that sort of look. To really see the difference, I'm going to click off and on. And if I decide, you know, that's a little too much glow, don't forget that your opacity sliders will allow you to fine tune it till it looks exactly right. So for the purposes of this tutorial, let's keep the glow all the way up. Create a layer mask that looks like this with a dark black 100% like smiley face swoop at the bottom, and then a little bit of lighter gray, so you're cutting your opacity down to maybe 30%, and that fills in the middle. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Much better than the original. If I hold down Option and click the eyeball, I can see how I began, and now I'm here. I think you'll agree this is a much more interesting image. If I want to go back and just check it at different stages, remember your history palette right here. Click on the three dots. Don't go forward or you'll lose every change after it, but you can go back 15 steps and just look for those changes, making sure to come back and click the bottommost one when you're done. Also, if the bell rings in the middle of the tutorial, always remember that you can do File, Save As, and keep it as a Photoshop document so you keep all your layers. So temporarily put that on your desktop and save it as a Photoshop document. Only when you're absolutely all done will you go to JPEG, make sure it's going to your desktop, and save it. Great! We did a lot of really complex things in this tutorial. Good luck. Really play around with painting that yellow. I want it to look just like this though when you're done. So watch exactly where my settings are and enjoy this, and I hope it gives you some great ideas about how to finish your images. Thanks, and I'll see you in class.